To know what makes you happy, you have to know yourself. To live out that happy, you have to be intentional. Knowledge and action is power. Let's talk the pursuit of happiness on today's Dear Single Women's podcast. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Shanentra. I am your host of the Dear Single Women's podcast. The Dear Single Women's podcast is a podcast for single women who are healing, growing, living, and loving their lives on their terms. You can find this podcast on YouTube Podcasts, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. I have to give a shout out to those who listen through Apple Podcasts. I looked at my analytics the other day and wow, you guys are really coming through. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for the love and support. I've heard such great things so far, and I promise you there is so much more to come. Please tell a friend. Okay, so we're going to get into today's episode. Today is part 2 of the pursuit of happiness. If you have not listened to part 1, pause this episode and go back to episode 4 to listen to the pursuit of happiness part 1. This is a continuation of the work we did last week. So let's jump on in. Last week we talked about 2 thought exercises to help us discover who we are, and in discovering who we are, we will discover what makes us happy. So I told you guys that I had to go back and actually do the work, right? I'm not just going to talk about it, I'm going to be about it. So I did. I did the thought exercise of if I didn't have any responsibilities for a year, all my bills were paid, everything was taken care of, and yes, that means you have the money as well. What would you do with the time that you had? And my first thought was, well, I would travel. Travel is my favorite thing to do. I love it so much. And so, of course, with a year off, no responsibilities, I don't have to go to work, I'm going to travel. But I want to talk to you about nuancing your thinking in this process. I really had to stop and think about what it meant to travel. I did pull out my journal and I wrote it out. And so first I imagined experiencing 2 weeks in the Amalfi Coast and maybe a month in Egypt with the pyramids. Maybe I'd go on some boat rides in Croatia. It sounds absolutely lovely. But then I said to myself, do I want to do airports for a year? Do I want to do jet lag, delays, bookings, and creating itineraries? Do I want to do that check-in, check-out process for a year? No, that's not actually what I would want to do. That sounds like stress. And when I'm designing my life, I don't want stress. So I have to get a little deeper. What is it that I would actually love in all aspects of it if I could do just this one thing with my time? And so what I came up with actually for me is I would create. I would simply live a life, a year of creating. I call myself a creative, but you know, that has a certain meaning now, but I was a creative before it was cool. So when I started college in 2007, even at 18 years old, first day in college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to get a degree in creative writing. And that's what I did. I simply wanted to create. I wanted to write stories. And even before that, I think about what I wanted to do as a child. Think back to what did you love to do before you had responsibilities, before those things got in the way. So as a child, when I didn't have to worry about paying bills, I read books. I was a bookworm. I loved to read. I wrote stories, I sang, I danced. Yep, I'm gonna date myself. I actually recorded music videos from MTV and BET on my VCR so that I could play it back, pause it, rewind it, learn the dance moves. Catch me if you want to see me do Thriller. I can do it. Just creating anything that allowed me to show up and be present made me happy. And I got a bachelor's degree in creative writing. I talked myself out of that because I was convinced if I wasn't a Toni Morrison, I couldn't build a life with this. And so I went into something else that I actually wound up loving, teaching. That's where I am now, almost a decade later. And even now, I'm pursuing the doctorate degree in educational leadership. And you want to know all that really means? It literally just means I am studying to be a professional problem solver. I want to walk into your building, diagnose your problem, and create a solution to fix it. And let's see how it goes. And if it goes well, wonderful. And if it doesn't go well, okay, let me debrief, figure out what went wrong, and create another solution. So I'm realizing that my whole life has literally been driven by this innate desire to create. Creating makes me happy. And for that year, I would go away and I would live in a beautiful villa on a Caribbean island and just create in every single way that I can. I'd write my books, make my podcast, sing all the songs, dance all the dances. I would sketch all the simple sketches that I could find on Google. I would read, right? Dive into someone else's world and see how they created things. I would cook, create. I would bake, create. I would create. I would just be present, put my stamp on the world. I'd be happy. And I think the biggest epiphany for me in this is like, wow, you're working on degree number 3 just so you can get the tools you need to create, just to develop and hone in on that innate desire to create. I've spent thousands of dollars and a lot of time, a lot of papers, a lot of sleepless nights to get this thing that says she can create. It makes me happy. I've learned that about myself. And moving into our next side of this is, if I know that creating makes me happy, then I need to bring that feeling and that action into today, into my everyday. Because then every day there's some aspect to my day that made me happy. And I can bring it into my day, even without that beautiful scenario, even without that villa, even with me being in the state that I'm in now, with the 4 seasons and no palm trees and no breathtaking sunset over turquoise waters. Even with all of that missing in my ideal scenario, I can still create because creating makes me happy. And so as you analyze this in your mind and your ideas, don't let the peripheral factors change the main thing. If creating makes me happy, I need to create. even if it's not in an ideal setting. So how will I bring that into my today? For me, and for you, whatever that thing is, it needs to become a priority. How am I going to make it a priority? I'm going to be intentional. Number one, I'm going to get it on the calendar every day. I love planners. I have a new one that I love. I got to use it. Every day, some level of creating needs to be on my calendar. Maybe I can write that book, Dear Single Women. What is it called? It's called Dear Single Christian Women. Lessons in Life, God, and the Single Season. Maybe I can work on that intro, because I got the outline. It's all there. Maybe I could work on that second book, Teaching is a Scam. And get it on my account. I don't know. I don't have a subtitle for that yet. But Teaching is a Scam. But there's an underlying point on it, not just to harp on being a teacher, because I do love what I do. But I need to get it on a calendar every single day. I need to look up in advance, what am I going to sketch? Because I didn't even realize, I always thought I'm a terrible artist. But I was always drawn to it for some reason. And then I actually allowed myself to experience it. And wow, when you know, I'm actually not that bad at it. And I enjoy it. And if you're on YouTube, perhaps you'll see some of my sketches that I've done. I'll share that. You can see that there. But I need to go on Google and look up some simple sketches that I want to copy, that I want to try. What day am I going to do that? Is that going to be Wednesday of this week? I don't have that soundproof room yet to sing to the top of my lungs, but I can go downstairs to the laundry room with the beautiful echo and reverb and go and sing. What day do I want to do that? I really love singing. Mondays are my podcast days. I love it. I get to outline where I want to go in the episode and then just create. And by the end of it, see what came out. Like, wow, I didn't even plan to say that. That was wonderful. And so after I get it on my calendar and I create every single day, because that's what makes me happy, I need to then reflect. In step 2, reflect on how it made me feel. Once you find out what makes you happy, you get it on your calendar, you do that thing. Don't leave it there. Reflect on how it made you feel. Name it out loud. Counteract the negative that you feel in your current circumstances by actually naming how it made you happy. So for me, I went to that job, and I'm actually going to use this because school starts in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm going to go do a job that I don't want to do anymore, in a setting that I don't want to be in anymore. And so when I come home from that job at 3:15 p.m., and I go do that thing that makes me happy, however I'm creating for that day, I'm going to actually sit and reflect on how that made me feel. And our brains are wired to focus on the negative, but by me actually naming it out loud, it's going to counteract the thoughts of what a crappy day I had at work. How many more days until I can get out of here? Instead, it's going to be, when I wrote that chapter, I really felt at peace. And the last thing I would advise you to do with being intentional is to share it with the world. So when I come up with these podcast ideas, these episodes, I should say, it's not enough to just write it in my notes. I need to actually go create it and share it with the world. That is making it a priority because I know I'm being held accountable. I can easily you and I can easily fall back into this bad pattern of just, oh, even though this makes me happy, responsibilities and duties take over. But when you're being held accountable because you're sharing that thing that makes you happy with the world, then you know that you got to focus on your happy because other people are depending on it. So I know if I don't post an episode, someone's going to contact me and say, what happened? So by me putting my creation out there, it's holding me accountable to do that thing. It's making me happy to actually be able to do that thing. And everyone benefits. It's a win-win-win. When you know you and you do what it is that makes you happy, the world benefits. Not just you, not just your inner circle, the world. And I'm going to also say God. God gets the glory from that. Because God is a creator. And I'm made in his image. And so to live my life creating brings glory to my Father, who made me just like him. So, what are you going to do to put this into practice today? If you already have your answer to the thought exercise, what you would do with your life if you had a year of complete and total freedom, then I want to know, how are you going to be intentional to bring that into your today? How are you going to make that your reality? We don't just dream over here, we put it into action. Because we are going to live happy lives. We're not here to be miserable, and we're not going to live like that. So, how are you going to bring your happy into your day-to-day? I am here for you if you need help in this process, if you need help doing this work. You can find me if you're interested in getting some coaching, if you want one-on-one support to go as you go through this process. You can find my socials in the description and reach out to me and let me know. I am here. On the next episode, we are going to talk expressing our fears. You won't want to miss that one. I'll see you guys next time.